welcome back to the Camino Cafe. I'm so happy that you are joining us again, and I am very thrilled that I have Steve Walther with me today, and we're going to be talking about his most recent Camino on the Portuguese route, and I'm very excited to talk to him about it from a very personal level, because I'm going to be walking that route with my dad here, I think in July. We've just moved it to July, but I'm really looking forward to hearing about Steve's experience. As many of you recall, I interviewed Steve a while ago. It's one of our most popular interviews, so I'm always teasing him about that. But anyway, I know this is going to be a great conversation. Before we get to that, just want to mention to everyone to please like our Facebook group. It's the Camino Cafe podcast group. And in that group, I will be doing weekly lives, and I'll also be doing lives with some of the folks that I've been interviewing, and that would give you a chance to ask them questions as well. So anyway, join that. And anyway, we're going to get to talking to Steve right away. We've been chatting, I think, for the past hour and a half, maybe. And so I know we're going to have a great conversation. So Steve, welcome back to the Camino Cafe. Thank you for being a big supporter and for coming back and talking about your newest Camino.
Well, forget about thanking me. Thank you for all that you do and all the wonderful people and stories you bring to us, because I love your interviews. I love to hear more about the Camino, and I love to hear from other pilgrims and their stories and wonderful words of advice and of experience. So thanks to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been so much fun. I started this to keep my Camino spirit going, and it's been so much more than that. And every single interview, I just feel like I'm learning so much and continually inspired, not even just for walking the Camino, but just inspiration for life. I think you and so many of the folks that I interview are just amazing people, aside from being amazing pilgrims. So it's a fun job. I love doing it.
Well, today with all of the negative news and all the bad stuff all the time, and if you pay attention to that only, you just think that we're all gonna be gone tomorrow and everything is horrible. And then you bring us great stories. Just that. Your conversations with Carlota, I just makes I permagrin after I hear it for the whole day, because she's just what a delight and what an inspiration, and how wonderful of a story, and for somebody her age to just grab the world and do her thing and do it her way, and it's just wonderful. And those are the kind of stories you bring that, again, help instill confidence that we're all going to be okay.
Absolutely. And she is, just this bright light, this bundle of energy. And I found out about her because I was in Finnis, Terre, and a taxi driver, actually, he found out that I was a pilgrim. And then he said, "Oh, have you heard about this girl that's walking?" And so I just reached out to her, and she's been so kind to allow me to be a very, very, very small part of her trip and journey. And I look so forward to the conversations with her, because I'm amazed. I am just literally amazed by what she's doing. So I'm glad that you listened to that one. And folks, I think I've done 2 interviews with her so far, so we'll be having another one coming up. So it's a delight to watch her. But now this Camino that you just did, what number is this?
This is my third. This was my third Camino, and hopefully my third of many to come.
Yes, it will be, I'm sure. So I kind of know some of the special things that happened along the route. So we've talked about them, but I'm really looking forward to talking about some things that happened at the Pilgrim House, and you got to meet up with Guilherme and Braga. So I want to talk about that. So I don't even know where to start, but I guess we'll just start with what made you decide to walk this route this time? And I think I told you, Steve, I haven't had many people come to the Camino Cafe podcast to talk about the Portuguese route. So this is probably new for some folks that haven't walked. And typically, for those of you that haven't walked the Camino yet, it seems like a lot of people start with the Frances. So you might not be as familiar with this. So maybe, Steve, just kind of talk about what made you choose to do this one and where you started, and we'll start there.
Well, I'll start off by saying, for those of you thinking about doing the Camino and the time commitment to do the Frances of 30 to 35 days, I can't take 35 days off of work. my routes, I'm looking at either doing parts of Caminos or ones that I can get done in 2 weeks from the standpoint of that. And now someday when I'm, kids are out of the house and my work changes where I can do it, I'm planning on doing all of the longer routes in entirety all in once. But in the meantime, my Caminos have been 2-week stints. So my first one, I walked from Sarria to Finisterre through Santiago. And my second one, I did the Primitivo from Oviedo to Santiago. And then the third one I did from Porto to Santiago. And so, but it's really interesting, the Portuguese route, and I did it this past November, so just a couple months ago. And normally I think the Caminos Portuguese can be crowded, but in this November it was not, kind of the pandemic slowdown, and then also it being November, kind of the tail end of the season, it was not crowded, which to me, I like better. I love pilgrims and I love to meet pilgrims. But with that said, I don't want to wait in line for an albergue or run around or for a place to stay or to find a drink or to have a meal or to do anything. That's you can wait in a line anywhere, but not on the Camino. So and the other thing about the Portuguese that I didn't realize is there's a lot of different routes. A lot of people walk all the way from the far south of Portugal. Some start in Lisbon and some start in Porto. And from Porto, there's actually 2 routes where you can do the coastal or you can do the interior. And then also there's the spiritual variant that I didn't know about. You told me about first, and then I learned all about it, but I was already kind of plugged into going the other route. So even though I did the central route, and the main hindsight, I wish I don't know, hindsight, you never know, but I was worried about the weather in November. And all the guidebooks said that you might have a lot of wind and rain if you do the coastal route. So I go out through the interior route, and then it ended up in November, we got 0 rain, and the days were between 50 and 65 degrees.
Yeah.
And I got sunburned.
Mild winter. Very mild winter.
What's that?
I said it's been a mild winter.
Yeah. I wore I have the kind of hiking pants that you zip off the legs, and I wore the long pants the first day I left Porto, and I never put them on again. So going out at night I did, but during the day, so I mean it was always hiking, even leaving early in the morning, it was never cold. And so I met all these other people that when you come together, the coastal route meets the other route, and I met a lot of people. They were saying, oh, and they were all like super tan because they've been walking on the beach for 4 or 5 days. Right. And when they came back in, and so my fear of the weather was turned out to be unfounded and just by luck. But yeah. I did the route, the interior route, and it was wonderful. If anyone's doing it, if I could give anybody, and I mentioned this to you, Lee, knowing that you're going with your father, is if I give anybody any advice, is that first day out of Porto. Some of the guidebooks mentioned it, but I go, oh, it can't be that bad. I would encourage you to take a cab to the first stop.
Yeah. Can you describe for us, Steve, describe for everyone what that felt like for you?
Oh, I was fearful of my life, and not just being joking about it. You're walking on the side of the road with trucks going by with their mirrors right here on your head. There's no place on the side of the road to get off. And then you walk through a very industrial area, and then some roads that didn't have anywhere on the side of the road to stand or walk. It'd be like a ditch or a wall or something. Wow. And so if I was going to do it again, I love the Portuguese route that I did. It was awesome. But I would have skipped that first day just because it just wasn't really. Now, I think if I would have done the coastal route from there, I wouldn't have had those same issues, I think. But skipping up a day, amazing.
So where would you start then if you skipped that day?
Oh, I wrote that down just so I didn't forget it here. Bear with me 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
But what I will say this is I really liked a lot the countryside there, and it was very, very, very nice. I would skip up to São Miguel de Arcos, and it was only like the first day. I want to say I don't think I only walked like 15 miles, 24 kilometers or something. So it wasn't like a long day. So you weren't missing a whole lot, but there was nothing.
Wait.
There,
Did you just say 24, 25 kilometers is not a long
yeah.
day?
Well, I mean, it's not like, yeah, I mean, no, not like a long day. I mean, but it's not like, but my point is if by skipping that, you're not missing anything.
Got it.
And it's not like you're missing like 30 or 50 kilometers or something of the hike. You're just missing that, because most of it you're walking through industrial areas and it's all trucks going by, and there are very few cafes. And it just, it wasn't like any of the other Caminos, but after that it was, I don't want to discourage anybody. After that it was fantabulous and wonderful. And I did stay in this amazing farmhouse there that was generational farmhouse that I was the only one there. It was funny, the lady came and her grandparents grew up in the house, and she got me set up, and she said, "What time would you like to have breakfast?" And she said, I live down the road, so I'm leaving, but I'll be here at 8 o'clock to make breakfast for you. And
Wow.
I had my own room, and it was funny because there was like a living room, and then the room was very nice, and it was an old farm, and they had a big courtyard in the middle with like all this old 300, 400, 500-year-old farming equipment, rakes and shovels and all hand pumps and all this kind of antique stuff there. And I was the only one there in this farm. And so it was kind of, well, okay. So talking about the Camino, I was there all by myself, and it was kind of like, it was nice,
Yeah.
And then the next day I walked all day, didn't see a single pilgrim. The next day I saw 2 pilgrims, I think. And the third day I saw like 1 or 2 pilgrims. So I saw very, very few people. And it's kind of interesting. I shared this on Facebook at the time, but I was thinking, I mean, Lee, you've known me long enough that nothing else, I do talk a lot, and I like to talk, and I'm very gregarious in that sense. And I was like, I'd be in these wonderful places staying there, and I'd be the only one there. And one place I had this kitchen all to myself. I went into the little town and I bought a couple eggs and some of their awesome bread, and I cooked some eggs and some of the chorizo and made dinner, and I'm sitting in this 300 or 400-year-old kitchen all by myself and going, I'm kind of like, I'm lonely, And so I called my wife, and I was kind of like, I know I'm in Europe, and I know I'm on the Camino, and I shouldn't be complaining. I said, but I just walked the last 3 days by myself, and I haven't really talked to anybody. And Maria, in her words of wisdom, said something to me. She said, maybe it was God's plan for you to need this time by yourself. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're exactly right. And it changed the whole dynamic. I was like, you're right. Stop with this pity party of me walking by myself. I enjoy and how awesome, and take it all in, and start thinking about, what the interpersonal aspect of the Camino and everything. And so the next morning I wake up with a pep in my step, and I leave the place where I was staying, and everything, the sun was out, the birds were chirping. I was in a good mood. And then I met one of the pilgrims that ended up being part of my Camino family for the rest of it. I met her as soon as I let go of
Of course.
negativity, I met this wonderful lady who I'll share a little bit about her a little bit later, but it turned out she just was a godsend and perfect. And we had some amazing conversations and walked with her, not only to the end, but then we rented a car. I shared earlier, we went and did some exploring around Santiago. So it, the Camino provides, right?
Right.
I will say one thing: if anybody considering the Camino Portuguese is Porto, make sure you stay there a day or two before you leave. Porto is one of my new favorite cities in the world.
Yeah, tell me a little bit, because I've heard that from folks, and you told me that right away. I know they have Porto to drink, which of course I'm looking forward to. But what is it about Porto that people just kind of get this dreamy look when they talk about it?
I got there. I spent a half a day and then a full day, and then I left. So I had really a day and a half of time there. And beautiful cathedral up on the hill, and the history is incredible. And I encourage you, you can go online and find it. They have all kinds of walking history tours you can do there. I did a 3 or 4 hour walking history tour that was dynamite. It was so good. But the city itself, it's clean, the food's good, the wine's good, the views, the bridge going through the town. It's just, it's like, it's just incredibly beautiful. But then secondly, I'm a little bit older than the whole Harry Potter stuff, the books, and my kids read it and everything and seen the movies, the first couple movies maybe, but I didn't realize the connection with Porto and Harry Potter. But the lady who wrote
What's the connection? I don't know either.
So the lady who wrote Harry Potter lived in Porto, was married to a Portuguese guy, and she wrote the first parts of the books there. And so a lot of the things in the whole Harry Potter story takes place in Porto. So as an example, and again, I'm not super familiar with it, so if I'm not saying it correctly, bear with me. There's the library in the movie with the staircase. It's kind of an interesting, beautiful. That is a bookstore in downtown Porto, and you can go.
All that stuff was like in Scotland or something. I didn't realize that.
It's And so you can go there now, and it's funny because so many people go there to see this bookstore that everyone was going to this bookstore and they weren't selling any books. So now you have to, you go online and you register and you pay to go inside of it. And if you buy something, they'll give you your money back. They'll take it off your thing. And there's a long line to go in. And if you pay even more, you can go to the front of the line. So I didn't go, I looked at it from outside, I didn't go in, but it was really interesting, the enthusiasm and people going to see it. But secondly is, in the movie or in the book and everything, that they wear capes, yes. Everybody that's in it, that comes from the actual university in Porto, where the students all wear those capes. You see students walking around, and that has been for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the guy told us it goes back to, they had a uniform that they didn't want to have a difference between people with money and people without money. So everybody had to wear the same thing, and they wore these kind of tights and uniforms with a cape. And so you see, like, I saw these groups of people walking around with capes, and I thought, what the heck is that, like drama class or something? And then and then the guide told us, he said, have you seen anybody walking around with capes? I said, yeah, those are the students, and some of them still do that. The other thing, there's some statues and whatnot from the movie that are around town. But the most interesting thing of all is, from Portuguese historical perspective, they had a dictator there who was he was a teacher, professor first off, and then he somehow worked his way up through the government and overtook everything. And I think his name, I could be wrong, I think it's Salazar was the guy's name. And in the movie, in the books, the bad guy, the professor, the bad guy in it is based off of, the persona is based off of him. And secretly woven into it. Yeah. And so there's all kinds of other little innuendos and little things that all have to do with Porto. And there's a story about her, how apparently her marriage to the Portuguese guy wasn't well. And she would go to that bookstore because it had heat and write the book there. And because her apartment didn't have heat. And then eventually she went back to England and wrote the rest of it. But the start of it and a lot of the storyline and everything came out of Porto. So there's that tie there. And so that whole part of it, I had no idea. But the cathedral and how the history tied with Spain, with how from the Inquisition, the Moors afterwards, really interesting thing. They have the old Jewish quarter when the Inquisition started, the same time when Spain, when they pushed out and they, the Jewish folks, they gave kind of three options: convert, leave, or get stretched on the rack kind of thing. And the old Jewish quarter there is there. And they told stories about how the Jews that said that they converted, but they really didn't, they would they would make sausage to look like pork sausage, but it was really chicken sausage, and they would hang it from their windows so that it was, oh, they're eating pork and drying pork out there. They must have converted. But all of the Jews that were from there, the Sephardic Jews that left, the Portuguese government now said, hey, if you can prove that your family was from here and left, you can get free citizenship and come back, no questions asked, and be a Portuguese citizen if you want. So there's like a resurgence of Jewish people coming back and getting Portuguese citizenship that they maybe left 500, 600, 700 years ago.
Interesting.
And well, 700 years ago up to, I guess, 1492, or 500, however many years ago. And now there's some people coming back. And it's kind of interesting. There's a big plaque there. But back to your, what makes Porto so amazing is, the most amazing thing is there's a wonderful bridge that goes across the river. And at night, the light, there's all of these old sherry boats there, or port wine boats with barrels of wine on them. And it's all lit up. And it's just surreal looking at it and how beautiful it is. One of those magical Camino stories, when it happened, I actually texted you, I think right away when I was there. I go, I had my first Camino magic thing happen. Is along the side of the beautiful bridge there on the hillside leading up to it. I was walking down this little narrow street, and that one day I had that free day, and I walked by. It was a cobblestone street, kind of narrow street, a row of houses that were on the side of the river that looked at the bridge, and there was a little lady there who she probably weighed 90 pounds. And I would guess her to be in her 80s. She was sitting on a little pad in the door stoop, and the door itself, I bent down like this to go through her door. But when I walked by, she grabbed me by the arm and she said, come, 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 come. And she was speaking Portuguese and I was speaking to her in Spanish. So we were kind of communicating. And I was like, what, this is the last anybody ever sees of me. I'm getting pulled into this house. Is someone inside gonna, rob me or something bad going to happen? But I went into her house, and she lived in this little house all by herself, and there was like a little salon, and then her bedroom, and then another room, and then her kitchen across the back. And she's like pulls me into her kitchen, and she like points out the window, and she wanted to show me her view of the bridge. And that's all. I didn't have anybody to talk to, and she was just saying it, in Portuguese. I was putting together that she was saying, look at my wonderful view. I don't have much, but I have $1 million view. And she was just so proud of her view, looking out her kitchen window right at that bridge. And then I was like, she was talking a mile a minute. I had no idea what she was talking about. She runs into her room and comes out with photo albums of all of her grandkids. So I'm sitting on the couch with this lady in her little apartment, looking out the view of the kitchen at the bridge, looking at pictures of her grandkids, and she was telling me all about them and where they live and everything. And again, I couldn't really understand a lot of what she was saying. And so the next day that afternoon I walked through and I walked by a pastry shop, and I grabbed a couple of pastries. I came back and she wasn't at her door, but I hung them because they put them in a little baggie there, and I hung them on her door, and just put a little note that said in Spanish, obrigado. And left it on her thing. And so it was like one of those magical things that she was just a lonely lady and wanted to share her like $1 million view with somebody. And it's like, I could have been like fearful and not taken her lead, but I'm so thankful that I did go in. And again, after that, it's one of those things that you feel all warm and fuzzy that you got to see that.
That's one of those special moments when you can actually interact with someone who lives right there, and to be able to look out at that bridge through her eyes and her view, and wow, what a special moment to get.
It was awesome. The one thing, if you do start in Porto, as soon as you get there, try to figure out where the Camino starts. If you don't,
is that hard to find?
Because it's really funny. You walk everywhere there's arrows going everywhere. And the first thing you learn too is the yellow arrows are the Camino de Santiago, which you're not sure if they're the ones going on the coastal route or the ones going on the tree route, because they're all going like this.
So how did you figure that out?
I had about 6 different places where I thought it started. The night, actually like 3 a.m, the night before I was actually leaving that morning, I finally downloaded a Camino Ninja, Is that what it's called? Camino
Yep,
Ninja,
yep,
Camino
yep.
Ninja.
That's the one
And
I
I
use.
finally, I like,
That's
because I was
Camino.
looking, nothing like the last minute, and I downloaded it, and it really had where I still couldn't figure out exactly where it is, but I kept walking to the line where it started through the
Yep.
city, and I found where it was and I got on it. But the other thing too is and I did meet several pilgrims along the way. There's a lot of people that walk from Santiago to what's it called? Fatima.
Yes.
And so you meet people going the other way, and the Fatima arrows are blue, light baby blue.
That's what I was going to ask you. I heard there was a different color, but I wasn't sure which
Yeah.
route had that blue. So it's the one to Fatima that has that. Okay.
So I did run across a handful of pilgrims that were going from Santiago to Fatima.
Okay.
So that, and I met a guy from Germany that started in Germany, walked to Santiago, and now was on his way to Fatima. Walked all the way from Germany. Crazy guy. He, we all hear pilgrims talk about, oh, you need to get the smallest pack, and even Gigi down to 6 pounds. I
think Gigi's got the record, but
Yeah.
are you going to tell us that this guy was carrying less?
This guy had this canvas backpack, like army style backpack, with pots and pans hanging from it. That was like this high over his head, and he was like all top. And in my mind, I thought, oh, he must have started yesterday, and not knowing, And I met him in Tui, which Tui's on the Portuguese-Spanish border, and I met him there, and he was with this lady who turned out to be a sister that flew to Santiago to meet him. And so we're waiting. The place we were staying, nobody was there, so I'm standing there waiting for this place to open. And he he comes by, and I said hi, and instantly I thought, this idiot, he's gonna have to leave half this stuff behind. And I said, well, when did you start today? And he says, no, I started like 3 months ago in Germany. And he'd walked all the way to Santiago, and now was going to Fatima, and his sister flew there to meet in Santiago and was walking that section with him. And I said, you carried all that stuff? He says, I know, right? And he said, yeah, and he was camping out a lot in the forest, and he was cooking his own food and everything, and had a tent and the whole thing, and which you don't meet many pilgrims, and there's hard to find places to do that, but evidently he did. I have a picture of him, and you look at him and you would think that, he was like on the Appalachian Trail or something, with his stuff, but he's doing it.
Yes, I was going to say that reminds me of this guy that I walked with this past Camino. Same kind of thing, huge pack. He was doing the camping thing, but it was killing his knees, and he had walked all the way from like Sicily.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, so he'd walked up, across, and we got to Burgos, and I ran into him, and he wanted to go in and see the church, and he couldn't. His knee was so bad at this point, he couldn't carry his bag and get up there. And I turned to him, I said, I'll carry your bag up. I go to lift up his bag, Steve, I couldn't lift it off the ground. I could not even believe. I begged him to take stuff out. And he's like, I can't because I'm camping. And I just thought to myself, I can't even, we talk all the time in all of our forums, all of the pilgrims, from the US, UK and stuff, trying to get our bags down. But there are people that walk with a tremendously heavy backpack, and somehow manage to do it. And my body couldn't do it. I don't know how they do it. It astounds me. It astounds me.
That's a really good point for other people thinking about doing and what to do, and how far they need to go every day. I met this guy in Tui that next day after that was another German guy that was walking the same direction I was. And he, a nice guy, we've become friends on Facebook, and his name is Sasha. And he ran, younger guy, and he ran marathons. He just ran a marathon like the week before the Camino. And so I walk with him from there, and I'm a big older guy. I'm a lot of things, but skinny's not one of them. I have my pack on, and I meet up with this guy, and we walked together and talked. We had great conversation, and we walked, and it went by. I walked, I think, further and faster than I have any point on any of my Caminos. And we get to the first town that was about I I don't remember, but I was like way ahead of schedule. And the people I was supposed to be walking with, I ended up being like an hour and a half ahead of them. And we've come into the first town. And I think I want to say we walked 12 miles in like 3 hours. And we get there and I'm like, holy smokes, we got here in 3 hours, and I wasn't supposed to get here till later today and have lunch with some folks. And he says, I know, 3 hours. He said, I can't believe it took us so long. And I was like, well, thanks for slowing down with me. You know, we had a cup of coffee and I said, Sasha, it was wonderful meeting you. Maybe I'll see you down the road, but I think you'll be to Santiago in 2 days, when it was still like 5 more days to go. I said, but I won't hold you up anymore. And we both laughed, and I never did see him again. Again, is a lesson to that was, walk at your speed. Because when I got there, we walked that fast, and it went by quick because we were talking and having great conversation and everything. But I was already tired. And normally I would have kept walking a bunch more. And I did walk a little more that day, but I was like, I wore myself out early, and rather than just kind of relaxing and, taking my time. And for him, he was relaxing, taking his time walking with me. And I'm a pretty fast walker normally, but anyway, it's kind of a good lesson to walk your own speed. Don't feel like you have to keep up with people because they're walking faster. Walk at your speed, and maybe you'll see them that night or not. But
yeah, that's an excellent tip, because I think sometimes when we walk too fast, we walk faster than our true pace. We can get, that can lead to some tendonitis, some other injuries. But it's hard, we're talking to somebody and we're really enjoying the conversation. And also the flip side can happen, right? That they're a little bit slower than you. It always amazes me. There's always somebody faster than me, and there's always someone that's slower than me, right? And you've got to make sure you're listening to your own body, right? And doing what's best for you, and not getting caught up with, oh, I hate to lose this pilgrim friend, but you're right, that was some fast. Well, I was going to say to you, so you walked from Porto to Santiago within 2 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, I did it. I did walk a little bit. I did do a little bit extra, where I did spend the day with our friend Guillermo, and he took me.
Yeah, so I would ask you, did you have to get to Braga? That's off the central
path. It is. So
right? So you have to take a bus, or he came and got you?
He met me in, I wrote down the name of the town because I can never remember where it was. He met me in, where was it? He met me in this little town, Barcelos, I think. Yeah, Barcelos. And then he lived in Braga, and which is like, Braga is like in a car, I can't remember how far it was in the car, maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe 20 minutes on the freeway. So it would have been too far to walk there, to get back. I could, that's with time, I could have walked there and back, because there is a trail that does that. But I'm so glad we did it, because that town has something that's really, really interesting. I'd never heard of it before, but it's called the Samiero Sanctuary. And there's this beautiful big church on the hill. It's called Bom Jesus do Monte, and it's several centuries old. This beautiful big church, and there's these amazing stairs that go back and forth and crisscross, and it's this huge giant testament to Jesus and God and the whole thing. But it's something as outside of Portugal I'd never heard of before. But I mean, it's like Vatican-esque with regards to the Baroque architecture and all of this incredible stuff there. And it's on the top of this mountain overlooking the town down below. So he took me there, and for those of you that have listened to visit with him before or listened to his podcast, he's an amazing young man, and I can say young man because I think he's in his 20s. And
he's amazing. Let's just tell everyone real quickly. So Guillermo does a podcast called Pasos del Camino, and he has interviewed, Steve, I mean, how many people do you think? This guy interviews
everybody.
Everybody. He's interviewed both of us.
Yeah, and he's Portuguese, and he speaks Spanish, he speaks Portuguese, and he speaks English. And the interesting thing about that was he told me, he said, yeah, in school I didn't really get good grades in language and everything, but I just started talking to pilgrims and talking to people. And then he used to be in the bike racing, and he had to get bike parts and stuff in English, and he kind of self-taught. But when you talk to him, his English is very, very good. And he does interviews in English, and he does interviews in Spanish. And he's 27 or 28 years old, and and he is everything about the Caminos him. I mean, and he knows everything about it. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful soul. And one of the things he told me, I'm sure he shared this with you, but he was invited to be, what's it called? A member of the Universal Arch Confraternity of the Apostle Santiago. So he was asked to be part of this, I don't know what you call it, a group that is out to promote the pilgrimage, and those that have showed the signs of being good promoters of it are part of this small group. And he was asked to be part of it, and he is, and I'm proud of him for what he's doing there. But it was interesting walking through Barcelos and then walking through Bragas with him, is he was just an incredible wealth of knowledge, and I love the history of. I'm a history buff, and I love the history aspect of all of the Camino stuff. And again, I just talking to him, I forget that he's so young,
Right.
and just such a wonderful ambassador to everything on the Camino. So if you have listen to his podcast, he has some amazing, and he gets some of the who's who of the Camino lore
Oh my gosh, he
on his
does.
show. And he's again a man much beyond his years as far as his everything that he does. So yeah, Pope John Paul went there in, I think, 1980, and so there's a big thing about that there. But if you're there and you're not in a hurry, I would encourage you to either take arrive in the town and then take a cab over to that other town and spend some time there, or walk it if you have the time, because the thing on the mountain there, I'd never heard of it. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yeah, I'm only familiar with it because of Guilherme, and some of the things he's told me about Braga, it just sounds amazing. So I
Oh,
cannot wait to go see him. I finally
yeah.
got to meet him in Santiago,
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah.
over New Year's, which was such a special treat. So
Yeah.
yes, I'll put a link to his show in the show notes so people can
Good.
check out the great work he's doing. And I mean, what a pilgrim! What a
Oh,
pilgrim!
he is so enthusiastic about it, and how it's changed his life and his focus. But one of the things that I found really intriguing was along the Portuguese route, there's a lot of old churches. And when I say old churches, there's like some of the oldest Christian churches in the world. And some of those were started by St. James. He was an apostle of Christ. And then when he was doing his traveling around, converting and getting people to join his team, he had his own apostles that followed him around, that were his, like he was to Jesus. He had these other folks that were with him, following him around. And there are these different small churches along the Camino Portuguese that were churches started by St. James's apostles. And so, yeah, so like first century churches, that these small little things that were started second century, like, as the Romans were on their way out, because when the Romans were doing it, they were still kind of practicing Christianity in secret. But there's some churches there, and some different old ruins that were from those churches that were started by the apostles of St. James. So pretty interesting stuff that, aren't, a lot of that isn't in the guidebooks, but Guillermo knew all about all of that stuff. So, and it was kind of, I wish I would have had him with me along the way, because he would say, oh, when you pass that town, did you see that? When you pass this town, did you see that? I'm going, maybe, I don't know. But
nothing like walking with a local, right? Who knows the history,
right.
and he's even more so because he's such a Camino buff, and So what I was just going to say, beyond going to Braga and some of these other things, what would you say was the biggest highlight for you? Like when you look at, like, I wasn't expecting it to be like this, and wow, like a moment that you were just wowed during this Camino. What would you say that moment was?
Well, I will say this is, I think each Camino that you do is different, not only from the personal perspective of who you walk with and who you meet, but each one of them, for me, the three that I've done, the geography has been different. I mean, the where you're going, and culturally it's pretty similar, but the part to me about Portugal was Portugal, the people are extremely nice and friendly, and and I was really surprised with Spanish, how similar and different it is from Portuguese. I mean, it's amazing. Some things you can totally understand everything, and other things I couldn't understand anything. But the other, and again, me doing this in November may not be the same as it is because I didn't have, there weren't a lot of pilgrims. But
Right.
the wow part for me was each of my other Caminos, I've met amazing people and had you find your Camino family and your people, so to speak, when you're walking. And I shared with you how, like, the first few days I was walking completely by myself, seeing no pilgrims to one or two a day only. So then I finally found some folks that were with me, and there was 5 of us that walked together that you could not have had 5 more different people. And they really made it wonderful and amazing to me, because the Camino then went from, from about me to about me learning about these other perspectives of the world, really. And these 4 other people, very unique backgrounds. I kind of started learning, like listening to them and dinners and walking on the trail, or having a beer or wine along the way, talking about where they're from and their perspective of things, which changed the Camino from being about the Camino part to, like, wow, I never thought of this that way. I'll give you a great example. Well, there was Evelyn, who is from Mexico City, had been living in Dublin for the last 4 years to learn English. And that was funny. I said, "You went to Dublin to learn English?" And she said, "I know, right? I didn't really pick the right spot." But there was Sebastian, who was from Germany, and he was from the East Germany side. And then the other couple, they were a married couple, and he was Portuguese and she was Polish, Antonio and Edita, and they were married but lived in Saudi Arabia. She was a midwife and he was a music teacher, and they met in Saudi Arabia, got married there, they lived there. And so the conversations we had between the Mexican girl living in Dublin, the guy that grew up on the East Germany aspect, he was 13 when the wall came down, Polish lady married to a Portuguese guy living in Saudi Arabia. Forget about all the Portuguese and Spanish stuff. The conversations we had were incredible because of those people and the people, their backgrounds. It was funny. I called Maria one night when we were on the Camino, and I said, "I have my Camino family." I said, "I'm walking with a Mexican, a Polish girl, a Portuguese guy, and a German guy." And she said, she says, "Don't tell me you walked into a bar." It was like the start of a joke or something. But each one of them has such a different perspective and a different background that in normal life, in the real world, we would have never been walking together. I mean, we would have never met each other.
No. For those of you that don't know, Maria is Steve's wife. So
yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, my wife Maria.
He's calling her at home, telling her. So
yeah.
Steve, first off, I can't, in knowing you, I can't even imagine you walking by yourself for 3 days, right? You're so
know, right?
In your professional life, you're with people, so I like, wow, that had to be an experience in itself. So I want to explore that a little bit more. But I'd also like to just talk a little bit about, how now, like looking back, and you're walking, you walk into the bar with these 5 people. What did you walk away with? Like, what did you learn from this aspect? Because you truly had a United Nations kind of thing going there, people that were from different countries, that were on their own living in different countries. Now they're in a different country walking, and it sounds like you must have found a common of English, I'm guessing, hearing this.
Yeah.
So what, looking back, what did you learn?
I learned so much from the 4 of them. And again, it really changed my Camino from being about the Camino and being about that to the coming together of these different cultures. I'll give you a little I feel comfortable talking about them. I'm not going to say anything that's any secrets that came out, but like for example, Sebastian, the German young man that I met, he was born in East Germany, and here's the life lesson I learned. I learned a few life lessons from him. It was kind of interesting. He grew up in East Germany and was there. I think he said he was 13 when the wall came down. And being an American, when you hear about people from East Germany being liberated and now Germany all being one, you think about instantly everything, their lives got better, right? We just think like the freedom and the move about and everything was wonderful. He said, you know, Steve, he said, I was in class one week and we were learning Russian and learning in the history books how bad America is. 1 week later, we had new books. We were learning English and it was all about how Russia was bad and America's good. It changed in 1 week's time. We went from this way to this way. And he said, my father had a really good job in East Germany, but when the wall came down, the job went away. It was a factory job and a lot of those jobs went away. And he said, there were several years that it was really, really, really hard. And again, it blew my mind because again, I envisioned that, oh, the wall came down, you're all free, you're all making more money, you do whatever you want and it's all wonderful. And then Edita, who was from Poland, who was a little bit, I don't know, they're pretty close to age, I would assume. She was living in Poland during that same time when that was happening in Poland as well. And she said, yeah, she said, my father had a really good job under the communists and afterwards he didn't. And then she talked about problems with her grandmother before with how it was and everything. And so again, as an American reading the history books and seeing the movies and thinking about that time and, first thing we think about the wall was the bring down this wall and then a great concert by Pink Floyd at the wall and everything's wonderful and it's terrific.
Right.
But all those aspects are things that I'd never thought about before. And my perception of what life was and where they've come. Now, here's the other interesting thing. Sebastian grew up in Eastern Germany during communism.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no religion really. You couldn't practice religion openly.
Right.
And ironically, he was from the town where Martin Luther was from. So it's kind of interesting historically from that perspective. Yes. But the thing that was really interesting was he now works for, though he grew up atheist, not really very religious. This was really, really interesting. And again, a life lesson thing is he works for a Catholic charity that for troubled teenagers that live in a home. Lots of troubled teenagers live in a home where he works. He works there, stays there overnight, and is a teacher's counselor person at this Catholic home for troubled teenagers. And the reason he was doing the Camino was to come up with a plan to go back and propose bringing these troubled teens on Caminos. And he was there learning about, yeah, isn't that cool? So here's a guy grew up in Eastern Europe that is not Christian, no Catholic, no ties to the Camino part of it at all, but doing the goodness and taking that goodness and doing good things in spite of it. And the other really interesting perspective to bring it all kind of back together with regards to the religion aspect is at one point we were all talking about what we were doing the week before we went on the Camino. And everybody, I was here, I was doing this, I was doing that. And he said, I was in Rome. I said, you were in Rome last week? He says, yeah. I said, what were you doing in Rome? He says, I was meeting the Pope. I said, you were meeting the Pope? And so I said, well, you mean like you went and he was up in the window and you saw him, up in the window like you do when you see the Pope when you go to Rome? He says, oh, no. He says, no, I met with the Pope. And he pulled up his phone and showed me a picture of him standing in front of the Pope. And I said, well, what the heck was that? Like, how did you meet the Pope? And he said, oh, yeah, we talked for a while. And I said, well, what did you talk about? He said, we talked about soccer and different things. He said he spoke perfect German and because the Pope's from Argentina. And he said, yeah, we visited. He said, the Pope's a nice guy. And I was here's a guy that's first off an atheist and grew up, working where he works. And last week he was visiting with the Pope, and he was there with a group of kids from that school that they took there. And the Pope came in to meet the group in one of the back rooms or something. And And again, he showed me a picture on his phone. Yeah. And I said, well, did you just like walk by and say hi? He said, oh no, we visited for a while. We visited for a few minutes. And his comment was, oh yeah, the Pope's a nice guy. I was, you know, how do you meet someone that just, you know, oh, by the way, I was hanging out with the Pope last week. And you know, that was pretty incredible. But so that was kind of a life lesson from the perspective of East-West, my perception versus reality. Yes. And we saw it that way. And the other thing, Evelyn was the first person, you know, that I met and walked, and she was just an amazing lady. And again, we talked, she went to Dublin to be, and she was a nanny, and she worked for this family taking care of kids. And this is the part where I learned a very, very valuable lesson. Is in my mind, I instantly assumed that she went there for a job to make some money, maybe to learn English, but it was more like for a job. And I just assumed that. And you know, that's a pretty reasonable assumption. A young lady going to somewhere to be a nanny is because she, you know, wanted a job and to travel and to do that. Well, which was partially true, but one of the times we were talking about, oh, back when we were in college, this and that, and she said something about when she was in college and lived in the dorms or something, and I said, Evelyn, what did you study in college? And she said, I studied molecular biology. I said, you studied molecular biology? She said, yeah, I was. I said, what did you do after college? She said, I was a pharmaceutical rep in Mexico City for like 15 years or something, for a long time. And I said, and you were a nanny in Dublin? And she goes, yeah, I wanted to go learn English, and I figured that was a way I could do it. And so, again, assumption is, you know, we tend to meet people and automatically assume one thing without listening and asking to hear their story. Without, you know, everybody has a great story, and I was just blown away by, you know, here is this, you know, somebody that was just doing this life choice thing because she wanted a new adventure and to learn English and to travel, and then she ended up being there 4 years. So that was an amazing life lesson in her, and you know, judging the situation before knowing all the details. And we inherently do it as humans, but it was a great lesson from the standpoint of don't assume anything. And then Antonio and Edita were I'll tell you, Edita was hilarious. And we were walking into this one place to have our menuderia, the Pilgrim's lunch, Pilgrim's meal that day. And as we're walking in, so for those of you that don't know, when you go in for the Pilgrim's meal, it's usually anywhere from 8 to 15 euros, 15 on a high end, but usually 7-8 euros isn't uncommon. And it's usually like a 3 or 4 course meal that you get. They'll bring you a bottle of water or a bottle of wine. And if you're by yourself, they'll bring a bottle of wine and a glass and you take what you want. And if you're with a group of people, they'll bring 4 glasses and 1 bottle of wine and you take what you want. And then you have a salad or soup, and then you have a main course, might be a piece of chicken and some rice, or a piece of chicken and French fries or something. And then it's usually a dessert and a cup of coffee. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful meal for 7, 6, 7, 8 on the high end, a little bit more. So we're walking into this place, and there's 5 of us to eat. And as we're walking in, she says, you guys better not sit with me. I'm going to go sit by myself. And we kind of look at each other, and then we sit down, we all make our orders. They bring her one glass of wine in the bottle. Then she came over and sat with us. She said, I want my own bottle of wine. I'm not sharing one bottle with all you guys. I want my own bottle of wine.
Hey, why haven't we all thought of that?
I know. But the way she said it with her Polish accent, and just really like this, is, you guys better not sit with me. I'm going to sit by myself. And you know, what did we do to offend her? Or is Antonio in trouble for, you know, with his wife or something? And he was like a real mellow guy, and he just kind of rolled his eyes, and she went and did her thing, and then came over with their own bottle. And but so talking about the experience of having these folks from all over the world was the Antonio and Edita they just recently been married. They met in Saudi Arabia. So I'm walking through Portugal and Spain with these 2 folks, learning all about living in Saudi Arabia. And won't go into that, but their stories about what it's like living there, and they actually liked it a lot. And you know, which for a lot of people would not be a choice of a place to live for doing the things that we like to do, especially on the Camino. But I'll give you an example, is they live in walled off expat communities where you have to go through a gate and there's only expats living in these places, and alcohol is forbidden. So they said a lot that you go to the store and there'll be people buying like a whole grocery cart full of juice and sugar. So they're making their own wine.
They're making their own. No wonder she sat at that extra table to get that wine, right?
Right. But it's like those are the kind of things that you know, that you can't have alcohol there. So like all these people go there and they make their own, and they, you know, the process. I'm not sure what they do, but anyway, so that part of it was, again, for me, what was the wow, what was the change? It was the Camino was amazing, but it was the Camino community that came together that I learned a lot, not only about my own culture and looking at it from their perspective, but me learning about them. And we ended up, like, again, all four of us were very, very, very different, culturally, social, economically, language, the whole thing. And we became very close. And it was funny because one morning we were all staying in a different place, and we agreed to leave at this one time, so we'd all kind of leave. And I was right on time, but evidently they got up early and walked out before I did. And I thought, well, I guess that's the end of that. I won't see them anymore. And I didn't have very good phone reception. And all of a sudden I got all this WhatsApp messages from them, and they were about 20 minutes, half hour ahead of me. I eventually caught up to them, and I said, well, I thought you guys ditched me or something, you know. And they said, no. They said, in fact, it was so quiet this morning, we couldn't figure out what was going on, and realized it wasn't you talking and telling stories the whole time. We missed it. So we had to wait for you to catch up so you could tell stories the whole time while we're walking. So it was, first I thought, are you saying I talk too much? And they're going, no, we there was a void. So yeah, but
I wanted to say, Steve, like, I feel like this is like one of those drop the mic moments, because I think you have just captured to me so many elements of what I think this pilgrimage, why it is such a rich experience. And this story, I think, perfectly illustrates, where else can you go? You know, you can go on a beach vacation or whatever, you know, but you're not going to meet four people with these kind of backgrounds and learn the things that you learn and have the experience and the stories that you just had. So first off, I feel like this is such a unique opportunity. And I had one somewhat similar on mine recently, where I felt like, wow, as an American, I have not understood history in a way that maybe it actually happened. And that was with someone that lived in Czechia, and starting with the fact that I still called it Czech Republic. He's like, where have you been? It's not called that anymore, you know? And I just feel like there's these opportunities, as no matter where you're from, you're going to get it, because I'm sitting here thinking, what would they tell me about Steve and about what they learned about America, right? And I think this is such a unique opportunity and gift to be able to go and have this kind of experience. Like, it's priceless, you know, as the commercial is, but I think it's priceless. It's, to me, one of the best elements of going on Camino is getting to have this experience and to learn something on a very human level from the actual participants that have been living it.
Yeah, and so much. And you learn that although we're all different and we all have different backgrounds, but underneath it all, we're very, very, very much the same. And
right.
I learned that right away from Antonio, from Evelyn, from Sebastian, and from Edita, that you know, ultimately, you know, we may say it differently, but we all have the same concerns and the same worries and the same desires and needs. And again, in a lot of ways, with all of the negativity happening in the world, it's encouraging to find out that we can still get along and be connected and have wonderful conversations and meet wonderful people. And it's okay to be different, but remembering that ultimately we're the same. So to your question, as far as what is like what this Camino, what was my wow thing, is it wasn't necessarily a Camino wow thing. It was the Camino experience of that cultural mesh that was probably different this time than my other ones. Um, and yeah, this next, there wasn't the aha, coming into the plaza wasn't the same in front of the cathedral, because I've been there many times before over the years, but it was there from the standpoint of coming in together with this group, because two of them had never been there before, and sharing it with them was really like, you feel that because they're feeling that, and then you feel it collectively, which in of itself is a magical part of the Camino. I also one other thing that kind of the last day we were all there together, actually the Antonio had been there once before with a group, with an English guy that he lived in Saudi Arabia with, and they did the Camino several years before, and he said, there's a karaoke bar. You want to do karaoke? I absolutely hate karaoke. I don't want anything to do with karaoke bar. I'm not. So as a group, I go, all right, we'll go. And he says, well, they don't open until like 1 a.m. All right. So we go to this, we walk all through town to get to this part of Santiago I'd never been to before. And he knew right where it was. And we go to this karaoke bar. And so again, the 5 of us are in this karaoke bar till like 5 a.m.
On a day you walked? Did you walk this day as
well?
well?
It was like the day after we arrived in Santiago. This is in Santiago. This is the last day. So
okay.
We're there till like from 1 a.m. till 5, at night. And great night. We're all happy. We've been drinking and having a great time. And we all sang, and the people, we met all these crazy characters inside the bar. And the next morning, we were all kind of going our separate ways. Antonio and Edita were taking the bus back to Portugal, and Sebastian was walking to Finnis, and Evelyn was going to be there today. She was staying with a friend that she had from Dublin, and she was staying in Santiago. So that night on the way back, I said, Evelyn, I'm renting a car tomorrow, and I'm going to drive, because I have an extra day before I go back. I'm going to drive to Finnis, have dinner, watch sunset, have dinner, come back. You don't have time to get out there. You want to ride out there with me? And she said, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. So we all said goodbye, everybody else. I'm going to meet Evelyn the next day. We get in the car and we drive to this town with Negrera, which I wanted to go there to see something from before I was there before, but that's another story for another day. But we get there, and I was trying to find if this lady that I'd met before still owned the bar, and she'd lost the bar and wasn't there anymore. So we were in this little pub, and I said, I wonder where Sebastian is, if he's like come through here already. So she sends him a note on WhatsApp, and he was literally 5 minutes from where we were standing. He got up that morning after the karaoke, walked all day, and was 5 minutes from where we were in that town. She said, we're in Negrera. And he said, I'll be right there. And he walked back 5 minutes on the trail, and there he was. So, after we said our big goodbye, here he is. So from that point, he got an albergue, left his bag, got in the car with us, and the 3 of us went out to watch the sunset and have dinner together. One last, after our goodbye, we had one more goodbye night.
One more goodbye.
Yeah. And then came back, and then we dropped him off at the albergue, and the next day he walked from there on. So he walked the whole way out there. And but it was just like one of those things that, of all the places where, I wonder where he is. He was 5 minutes from where we were, just pure chance. And and he, there Sebastian walked off the trail, out of the woods, back to the car, and away we went.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are the kind of magical things. Sometimes you just, how did it all mesh together?
Exactly. And how cool for him to be able to see the sunset once with you guys, and then go back then on his own.
And it rained when he was by himself, and it was sunny and beautiful when we were there. Yeah. So
very lucky. Very lucky. Well, and sometimes that rain out there, it can be even more beautiful, with all the clouds, and you just never know, like what a special moment. I wonder if you want to talk about Faith and Nate. you got to meet them from the Pilgrim House, whom I interviewed a while ago. And I haven't been able to meet them yet because they haven't been here during the time I've been in Santiago either time this year. So I wonder if you want to talk about what your experience was like going and meeting them.
Yeah,
you had
so
to have cool things that happen.
Yeah, well, I actually didn't get to meet them. They weren't there.
I thought you did get to meet them.
No, I went there and they weren't there. It was, oh, here's the funny story. Well, there's a two-part story. So I'll tell that and it leads into another one. So if we have time, I was waiting for somebody for something else totally unrelated in a little cafe. And there was a sign, a billboard, right, like about for a shop right next to where we were sitting for coffee. And I had coffee there the day before too. So I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I look over at the sign, and I'd seen the sign a bunch of times, and I never read it. And all of a sudden, it said Pilgrim House. I go, that's the people that Lee interviewed. I just listened to the podcast a few months before, and it's right there, right where I was sitting having a cup of coffee, you know. So I walked in, and there were two young ladies, one from Oregon, and I don't recall where the other one was from, that were volunteers at there. And I went in and introduced myself, and I said, I listened to the podcast. I said, are the owners here? And Nathan and what are their names?
Faith and Nate.
Yeah, Faith and Nate. And they said, oh no, they're not here, they're not in today. And so I sent them a note, and I sent them an email because they gave me their card. And I said, oh, sorry I missed you because of Lee's show. I listened to your wonderful project and what you're doing. And I got a copy of their letter that they, your decompression letter and all of their stuff that they do. And the wonderful young ladies working there gave me a tour of the facilities and the meditation room and the stuff that they have there. And it was just kind of a small world that all of a sudden I looked over and, well, there it is right there. But it ties into another crazy story that happens on the Camino so much is, so fast forward or rewind back to 20, I'm going to guess here and say 20, I can't remember if it was right before we were married, 25 years ago. So I don't know if I shared this in the first interview or not, but when I lived in Spain, met my wife we got married in Spain and then moved back to the States. Lived in Granada for a few years and in Jerez de la Frontera near Cadiz. And her family's all from there still, and we live in the United States now, but that's where her family is and when we go and visit where they are. But to make a long story short is we went up to Santiago way back then, and when I lived down there, I was painting on the streets. I was selling paintings and painting watercolors and selling them for, basically at that point, I had room and board paid for by her family's house. So I just had to make enough for drinking money and traveling around. And if I sold a painting in the morning, that meant I was finished and I could go have beers that night. So we're up in Santiago and we meet this wonderful street artist painting on the street, and he was really good. He did these amazing watercolors with pen and ink over them, and we visited with him. And Maria actually, when I left, she bought a couple of paintings and then surprised me with them later and gave them to me. And I had them framed in my office. Right now, I'm looking at it right here up on the wall. And so this guy, we visited, and I said, I'm painting and selling paintings down in the South, and you're up here, wonderful, you're doing this. I said, you're better than I am, but that's amazing, you're doing this. He was from, I think he's from Colombia, and great guy. So I, say goodbye, and then my first Camino in 2018, I'm in Santiago afterwards, and I walk down the street and I see like a shop, a gallery with that guy's work in it. I recognized it, and I walked in, and there he was, and he had his own gallery now. And I was like, I'm sure you don't remember me, and but I met you on the street. I have on my wall in my office your paintings there now, and he said, oh my God. He said, I don't remember, but that's fantastic. That's great. And he does this thing for pilgrims where you tell him where you went, what days, how far you walked, and he calligraphies it all out and does a wonderful painting. And I bought one from him, and I put it on my wall just like I did before. So my second walk I did with my daughter, and I went back and visited him again, and he did another one for my daughter and I. And then so this time I went to go see him, and I was actually at the coffee shop right next to the family, the Pilgrim house, and it was across the street from his gallery, and that's why I was there waiting for him to come back to pick up the painting that he did. When I looked over and saw the sign, and when I went into their place, they had a big picture of his on their wall inside of the place, and I told him that story. He goes, "Oh yeah, they bought one of my paintings," and I asked them about the paintings and said, "Oh yeah, he's across the street. He's a great guy." So it was kind of a small world thing where all of that was right across the street from each other, and so that the artist Juan Carlos, we become kind of friends. Facebook, we sitting back and forth. I encourage anybody that is doing the Camino when they finish, if you want an amazing memento of your trip, he does a fantastic job of making something customized for you, and it's not that expensive. Don't hold me to this, but I want to say it's, depending on what version you get, it's between 60 and 100 bucks.
All right, I'm gonna have to go over there and find this place.
Yeah,
He said his name was Juan Carlos.
Juan Carlos. He goes by. Oh, I wrote it down because he signs everything differently. But it's right across the street. You'll see the gallery there.
Okay.
And
all right, I will find the name of it and I'll put it in the show notes. And you know what, Steve? Let's have you send me a photo of one of the maps one of the things you're talking about, and that I can include that on the post so everybody can get a chance to see it, because it sounds amazing.
I have some great pictures of him actually finishing the painting on the last one, and yeah, I mean he's and he's an awesome guy. He went there as a student from Colombia like 30 years ago and never left. And
thinking one of my friends here just mentioned him. I'm thinking it's got to be the same person, and also is just really bragging about his work.
Yeah, I want to say because he combined his last name. I want to say he goes by Zamara or something like that. But it's like a combination of his last name. But I'll send you the information afterwards so you can put it on there. But he is just another one of those interesting characters that you just like now become to me, as he's one of the, walking through, listening to the bagpipes play, walking into the square and seeing Juan Carlos. All of those things to me are all part of Santiago now. And now I'm afraid and embarrassed to admit, and probably singing karaoke is probably part of it now too.
And before we end, I must know, what was your main song? What would we see you sing should we walk into Santiago with you?
Oh, you know what? To be completely honest, is getting there between 1 and 5 in the morning. I couldn't even tell you what any of the songs sung at this point. It was a very vivacious night, to say the least. And
I'm sorry I missed that one. That sounds really fun.
I will say I stayed on the front end and the back end. I used points because I travel a lot to stay in a nice hotel. And I was staying in a nice hotel in Santiago, kind of after walking, to kind of reward myself to have a nice, and walking in the lobby at 5 in the morning in this very nice hotel. And then they had breakfast, but because of COVID, you had to come at the time that they had. And I walked in and I looked at the guy and I said, hey, I think I have an 8 o'clock breakfast reservation. Can I move it to 10? I wasn't gonna make it. but anyway, part of the Camino lore and story. But
well, oh my gosh, it sounds like an amazing Camino, and I knew you and I would do this. We are way over our hour, but I'm gonna have to close this, but I think we could talk all night. And thank you for coming to the cafe and talking about the Portuguese route, and for sharing these great stories. You always have great stories, but I think tonight there have just been some really great examples of what it means to be a pilgrim and what it means to walk the Camino. And I'm pretty certain that anybody that's listening to this is going to be even more excited to go back and walk again, or walk for the very first time. So thank you for giving us a glimpse into what your Camino walk was like. And I've so enjoyed this conversation. So thanks for coming again. And when you coming back?
October, November. I'm shooting for my 4th Camino. I haven't, I'm kind of decided, I'm looking at a couple different routes. I'm not sure it's, with this, the COVID thing and where we're going to be then, I'm not sure, but I'm either going to do the first 2 weeks of the northern route. I'm kind of leaning towards that, or you and I talked a little bit about the Sanabres route, which is a kind of not a very well-known route that kind of it might be kind of interesting as well. So I'm not sure, but somewhere, and no matter where it is, hopefully I'm going to go wherever you are.
Yes, you better come see me.
Yeah.
And second of all, either of those routes, again, we haven't had a lot of people talk about either of those routes that much. So the Sanabria not at all, and the Norte not very much. So we will have you back again. You're going to be we're going to start having those Saturday Night Live coats for the people that have appeared numerous times onto the show. You're going to be one of the first people to have the Camino Cafe podcast coat. And
you know, I would love it. It is. I'm so thankful for you and what you're doing, and having the format from which we can share. Because it's the Camino's been so giving to me, and I continue to receive from it. And it's nice to have you in a position where you can give back and share and all of this type of stuff. It's changed. I walk every day now because I never know when they're going to call and say, Steve, we need to put you in right now. So I want to be in walking ready shape to go. And it kind of, from the mind, body, and soul aspect of the Camino, that walking and that, and for those of you that are getting ready to walk, I listen to Lee's and other podcasts while you do it, and it gets you even more excited for when you are there.
You don't know how much that means. And Steve's a real planner. He just sent Dan and I a copy of his latest spreadsheet planning his next Camino. So it's my blessing to be able to do these shows, and to be able to have Dan Mullen's show and all the other people out there that are recording what I think now is we're recording history. And the story sharing, I think we learn so much more than just being Camino pilgrims, but being pilgrims in life. And I love being able to be a part and hear the stories and to be able to share them. And, I just hope that the people that hear these stories come and walk, because I think if we all had the chance to walk together, there'd be more peace in the world, because we get to see the best of people, and we get to be the best versions of ourselves when we're out walking. So,
amen.
Yeah, amen, right? Well, thank you everyone for watching. I'm going to close out the show. Steve, stay on so you and I can say goodbye. And if anyone has any questions, I'll try to make sure you have all the links to things we've talked about today. If I missed something, please reach out to me. And if you have any questions about walking or things going on, Steve and I are always commenting on different things on the Facebook page, and want to be a resource for people. And if you walk the routes that Steve's talking about, getting ready to walk, especially the Snavers, we need more information about that, so let us know. So thanks everyone. We'll be back next week with the show, and thank you for all your support.
Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.